The very first question asks the daily amount of oxalate a person with disturbed digestion should have. And I know there's some nuance to this, so I'll let you have at it.
So, where I want to start with this is that when I went to a low oxalate diet, digestion was actually one of the things that improved first. So, I was one of those people who, on my probably more plant-based, like not fully vegan, but tending towards vegetarian and a more plant-based diet, I was taking handfuls, like almost literally handfuls of digestive enzymes and things like ox bile just to try and get my food done. And it was miserable. It just felt like my whole digestive system was just so sluggish and compromised. And I hear this a lot from people who are thinking that they have oxalate issues. My gut's leaky. It feels like I can't do what I need to do with my food. And in fact, it is not that surprising for a couple of reasons. Now, one is that oxalate can be taken up into the liver and can be impacting our production of bile. This is not good if you're trying to digest any kind of fat or oil because you need that bile. And in fact, when the bile is being secreted, because oxalate gets secreted out of the tissues, this secretion process can mean that you actually have oxalate going into the food while you're trying to get the bile into the food. And then oxalate can actually be impacting our ability to produce pancreatic enzymes. And that's because the pancreas is a big consumer of bicarbonate. In the same way that sulfate transporters can move oxalate, turns out bicarbonate transporters, cell transporters, can move oxalate. And so your pancreas might be struggling a little bit. And the combination of those two is a 1-2 hit on digestion. It's a 1-2 punch, right? And so what I want people to consider is that perhaps if they have disturbed digestion, that it is related to oxalate. And if then they're thinking about how much oxalate they can take in a day and still support their healing, that one of the things they have to consider is how unwell they are now. And the more unwell, ironically, the more likely they should go slowly with reducing oxalate so that we're not getting this big wave of oxalate hitting the tissues. Perhaps the liver and the pancreas struggle more. We need more research on some of this, but that would be my working hypothesis because I often see when people are mobilizing oxalate, they get a repeat of this poor digestion. So it is a very nuanced little question. If you're taking in a very high oxalate diet, come down slowly. And you may want to keep digestive enzymes and things like ox bile or taurine on hand to support the liver, to support the pancreas, and use them maybe intermittently. If I'm feeling okay and my digestion's doing okay, then maybe I don't need them. But maybe if stuff's happening, oxalate's mobilized, for some reason I've had a high oxalate meal, I might need some of those. And, getting to a low oxalate diet's not necessarily something where you get a ribbon if you get there faster. The big thing is like getting to the healing, right? So if our bodies have been using oxalate, our microbes in the gut have been using oxalate as a kind of fuel. What we want to do is shift how much oxalate we're taking in slowly so the microbiome can respond to that. And we're not just all of a sudden making a big swing and then our body's homeostasis is thrown off. I mean, really, that's one of the things when we're talking about disturbed digestion. I think we also have to keep in mind some people talk about gut healing and they don't realize that oxalate's actually part of their gut healing. One of the best things I did in terms of my gut and the whole leaky gut and all that was lower my oxalate. But again, slow, steady, and try to respect your body's level of resilience. If you're not feeling very resilient, come down slow. If you feel relatively healthy, then maybe you can come down a little bit faster. And I do think if you're relatively healthy, you can come in the range of a medium oxalate intake. That was defined by the Vulvar Pain Foundation as between 61 and 100 milligrams of oxalate a day. That's actually pretty easy to do. And it even allows for some room for, say, slightly higher oxalate foods. Most of the people I work with will do reasonably well and maybe fine at 60 to 80 milligrams, even over the long haul. It'll really depend on how well their body can cope with the stresses that oxalate presents. In my own case, over time, I noticed I felt better the lower my oxalate was. And so I, like you now, well, I may not be as good a carnivore as you are. I probably cheat a little bit, but basically the lower my oxalate intake is, the better I feel. So I stick at a very low level, but I would follow, if you will, your body's lead on that kind of thing.